Hey everybody, welcome to That Expert Show, where you help run the show. I'm Anna Canzano. Thanks so much for being with us today. We have a fun topic lined up. We are talking about dating and attraction. I have to think, and I don't know for sure, but I just know from conversations with friends who are single that dating is harder than ever now these days. I know there's a million apps out there that is supposed to make it easier, but really it's easy. It's relatively easy, I think, for people to create an online persona as if they are somebody they are not. And it's much harder to be attractive and engaging in person, and the art of flirting and that sort of thing. So we've lined up a fantastic expert today to talk with us about this. She is author of the best-selling book, The Noble Art of Seduction. She has a fabulously successful YouTube channel that has more than 70 million views and counting. And she launched a podcast earlier this year called Piece of the Attraction. She also does workshops online and training sessions with people to help them be better at dating. Joining us live right now from London, England, across the pond, is Kezia Noble. Kezia, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Kezia, how did you even launch into this business? Was this something that you decided that society really needed help with some years ago?
No, not at all. I was actually headhunted. So I was approached by a guy back in 2006 that was basically kind of doing what I'm doing. He had a company. He was helping guys get better with women, and he ran these weekend workshops, and they needed some girls to come along and just give some feedback to the guys who were attending the workshop. So I was kind of curious, but also I was a real skeptic because I believed that attraction couldn't be forced. Either there was chemistry or there wasn't. So there were two things that I noticed when I went to this weekend workshop. The first one was that there were actually skills and techniques and insights that could really help men get better results with women. So that was quite an eye-opener. And the second thing I noticed is that there weren't any honest sort of female advice in that kind of seduction community, which it was back then. The girls that were at the workshop were kind of giving wishy-washy, well-meaning advice such as, just be yourself, smile more, make a laugh. And I was a lot more honest, brutal, some might say. I've always spoken my mind, been very honest, very direct, got me into a lot of trouble in the past. But actually, this workshop, as I was getting my coat to leave, I was expecting them to be waiting with pitchforks. But actually, all these guys were like, can I book you for a private session to help me with my, my attraction skills? I was like, I don't do this, this is not my world. I just came here for this weekend, that's all. But slowly, I realized that I wouldn't say something cheesy like it was my calling, but it was definitely something I was really good at straight away. And eventually, so I started working for this company, and I launched my own YouTube channel, and that got a lot of views, which I didn't expect. And then I thought, oh, hold on, I think I can do this on my own. And from the back of that, I got a publishing deal. And that's when I launched my book. And it's also the same time when I launched my own website and my own company.
Well, it's been impressive to see how you have built this empire really on your own. I know you said you have a team of people, but I know that comes with a lot of hard work and a lot of persistence. What has been the number one thing that has surprised you along the way as you have had these conversations with people and tried to advise them on how to date a woman and how to establish that connection with somebody?
Okay, I feel that so much of what we do and what I teach revolves around basic conversation skills. Body language is part of it. They say that communication is like 70% nonverbal, but a huge part of it is knowing what to say next. This is where guys really struggle. We call this the transition from the approach to having a full-blown conversation. So once they're having a full-blown conversation with a woman, they have a sort of crossroad, which is, shall I just sort of play it safe and end up in the friend zone, or shall I escalate, sexually escalate, flirt with her, show her my intent? But the part where they don't even seem to get to that part, a lot of guys, because they seem to fall apart like a cheap suit around sort of transition. So the transition stage, which is, okay, they've introduced themselves, they've gone over their opening line, the girl's gone, oh, thanks, or she's replied to their opening question, and then it's like, what next? Their mind goes blank, or they'll just ask a series of very uninspiring, boring questions, playing it safe. So that's something that I found really interesting. So I help a lot of guys now just with their conversation skills, which I didn't expect at all. That's interesting. And it sort of feeds into approach anxiety, which a lot of guys get. They get a fear of approaching women. They think they're not good enough, or they think they're going to get rejected. But we find that when they master conversation skills, when they have the ability to have a conversation with anyone and become their full focus, their number one priority in under 3 minutes, when they know that they can do that, the approach anxiety diminishes significantly.
And in your opinion, then, has the dating app world made this easier or harder? Because I know that so many of my friends who are single, they rely on the dating apps. And so there's a whole dance, I think, that occurs first online, via text, via messaging, before these people actually meet in person.
Do you really want me to get started on the whole dating app scene? I got a lot of opinions on it.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, here goes. From what I see, I believe that we are heading for a huge dating app hangover. For about a few years, we noticed, I would say between 2015 and 2015 and 2018, we noticed a drop in YouTube views, just people coming to our workshops, our 7-day mastery program. But we noticed that there was this significant rise in dating apps. So what happened is a lot of guys believed that this was the solution, dating apps. A lot of women believe that too. As you said, your friends use it. They rely on dating apps. And this is where it becomes dangerous. Dating apps should be an option, okay? An option along with the other option of meeting people organically. So what we noticed in that few years was this drop. And now there's been this huge increase. And the feedback I'm getting from guys is that they thought they were making some sort of progress with the dating apps. So they were arranging dates. They were getting dates with girls. And for them, that was like, I'm making progress. Before, I wasn't getting any dates at all because he wasn't approaching. So it creates like an artificial sense of achievement. I'm getting responses and getting dates. But then after 2 or 3 years, they've realized that those dates are not materializing into anything. They're just one date and they don't see the girl again. A lot of them also feel very let down because they're expecting somebody else. This is also something that women experience because people don't look like their pictures. Only very few people look better than their pictures. Most people, their pictures look better than them. So that's one point. We're kind of like expecting someone to look better than they actually are. But also, you can be anyone behind a screen. You can edit and re-edit the witty, perfect response. And so somebody's imagining that there's this very attractive, dynamic, witty person that they're going to meet. And then they can meet someone who is quite insecure, quite shy, pretty quiet, and just doesn't look like their picture. Doesn't mean to say that they're unattractive, but when you've got an idea of what someone's going to look like, and they don't look like that, it takes time to adjust. So I believe dating apps are actually on the way out. I think good-looking people will always do well on dating apps because that's all people are looking at. What happens to the guys who are not physically attractive, or the people who are not physically attractive? What's going to happen to them? I think dating apps are for the good-looking people out there because that is what we're going on. initially. When we swipe left or right, it's like, okay, is he my type? Is she my type? No, yes. We don't even give that person a chance. Whereas in a bar or nightclub, I've been approached by guys in the past who have not been physically my type. They've walked in, I've looked away. And then they talked to me, and it was something about the approach, their body language, the aftershave they were wearing, their smile, and it triggered something in me. But if I'd have seen them in a one-dimensional photograph on an app, I would have, swiped. I don't use dating apps, but I would have swiped left, or was it right? I don't know. Whichever one is the one, which means you're not interested.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either. But that brings up a good point. Bars and nightclubs are these, I mean, these are the traditional places where people think they should go to meet other people. But I can't imagine meeting someone in a bar or a nightclub. Is that the ideal setting in which to make that connection?
It is still the best place to meet people. Yeah. People are more confident in bars and nightclubs. It's socially more acceptable to be approached in a nightclub or a bar. But we are finding that sort of nightclubs and the nightclub scene is for older guys a bit more challenging. They don't have their social circle anymore. Don't have their wingmen. Their wingmen are like partnered off with someone, and they don't want to be like that lone wolf walking around a nightclub full of young people. So a lot of guys, both old and young, are looking for other options to meet women. That doesn't include nightclubs or dating apps. So we show guys how to meet women in the daytime scenarios, art galleries, museums, parks, malls. Evening classes are a good one also. So yeah, but the nightclubs is still though. We found that it's still the best place to meet women.
I want to thank everybody who's joining us and watching online. Folks like Bobby, who says he's never had a bad date. He's been very particular about the females that he's dated, but he says he hasn't had a date since 1975. So things might have changed a bit since then. Tammy, who's joining us on Facebook via the Oregonian newspaper. Hi, Tammy. She says, as we age, and this is what you're referencing in part, the dating scene is poor. No one wants someone in their 50s. So how does someone in their 50s meet someone their age?
Okay, so this is a lady, yeah?
Yes, Tammy.
She's in luck. I mean, I'm getting older, and I've noticed the young guys, the young ones, there really is a market out there for us older women. Young men, I didn't realize this until I sort of hit like late 30s, that young guys have a thing for older women. They do like them. How to meet them? Again, dating apps is fine if you use it as an extra option, but there's a point where you're so knee deep looking at a phone that you miss the opportunities in front of you. So is it Tammy?
Yes.
So if Tammy looks around and sees somebody that she likes, there's nothing stopping her from approaching that person. Now she might feel like, oh, this is really awkward. People don't do that. Granted, that is the case. But I would hate to be that person to miss an opportunity. I've had it myself. Like I've seen a guy and I know he's been looking at me and I've been looking at him. I thought, oh no, just forget it. And I've regretted it so much. So really, I mean, don't stop using dating apps if they're helping you, but don't ignore the opportunities in real time that are in front of you.
Yeah, and I would assume too, I mean, it helps. It's harder if you're an introvert, but it certainly helps if you are engaged in community activities, if you do volunteer service, if you attend a church, if you're literally in places where there are other people rather than just sitting in your home.
Just to go back to the introvert point, for women that can work very well, not so much men. I'm not saying that introverted men can't get results, but a woman can show vulnerability and men can find it very attractive. So if you said, you know what, I don't usually do this. I'm a really shy girl. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I wanted to come up to you and say hi. Men actually find that very attractive in a woman. With men, they've got to be a bit more careful with that game. A little bit more careful. I say to guys, just say, this is so random, but I had to come up and say hi. And the key phrase here is, this is so random, because it's got to have that feeling of serendipity almost to it.
Not something that you're doing on a daily basis at the grocery store.
No, and a lot of guys say, I was watching you. I've been watching you.
Oh, man.
You very careful with your words in that opening line in the daytime. You've got to be extra careful with what you say. And we found that this is so random, but is a great little pretext.
Yeah, I've been watching you. Definitely enhances the creeper effect, if you will. Jeff is tuning in as well on Facebook and says at age 50, he's one of those who's trying to learn how to date. He's never dated, and he's been too shy and afraid to ask a girl out. How can you help Jeff?
Okay, well, it is a kind of approach anxiety that Jeff has. And because he's delayed it for so long, the fear has grown bigger and bigger. Okay. We help guys with severe approach anxiety by, and I'm not saying he should do this, but maybe this will give him some ideas of what he can do in his own way. So we use this exercise called blowout game. Okay. So this is where we take our client to a nightclub and we get him to say the worst possible opening line. And the instructor he's with has to also, be challenged and say whatever the worst opening line they can come up with is, or they give each other really bad opening lines. When I say bad, I mean really bad. Stuff like, I'm an alien from out of space and I've come here to impregnate human women. Something so outlandish, so ridiculous. And we get them to do that. And at first they're doing it and they're kind of like very unsure, but like, what am I doing here? And the whole point is that you need to get blown out. Okay. The girl has to reject you. Okay. The girl must say to you, I'm not interested straight away. And what happens is we've noticed that after about 3 or 4 attempts of this and coming up with the most ludicrous, stupid openers that they could come up with, they couldn't get rejected in the end. Something shifted. So the first few times girls were like, oh, whatever, go away. And what happens is the guy faces his fear and he realizes it's not that bad and he's owning it. Then he goes and talks to a next girl and a next girl using an equally bad line, and then something shifts. And the thing that shifts here is not the lines. The lines have got actually worse. It's the fact that he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care about rejection. And that creates a very strong confidence, like a super confidence. And that is what attracts people. That kind of unapologetic, I'm doing this for fun, I'm having a good time, this is my reality. And that's what attracts us to people. I'm not telling, is it Jeff? I'm not telling Jeff to go out and do something this extreme. But what he does have to experience is rejection. He has to feel the pain. Anyone that's a success in anything that they do has had to, I'm talking 99.9%, okay, have had to feel some sort of pain or rejection or struggle to get to that point. And what he's doing is he's kind of burying his head in the sand and just delaying it and delaying it. And the fear becomes greater. So he's got to go out there and he's got to experience rejection. All of our instructors in my team are very good with women. They have huge results with women. But they probably go for more rejection than any other guy, because they are out there putting themselves out there on an almost daily basis.
Is it realistic for people to go and use dating apps and try to find a long-term mate? Or is it more realistic that the people who are on dating apps are looking for very short-term experiences with the people that they encounter?
50-50 in my experience. I think a lot of people are very lonely out there. I think people are lonelier than ever right now. and I think they desperately, desperately want someone. But what happens is they get caught up in dating apps. They see someone that they like, the person likes them back, they get talking, but it's like a candy store. Somebody else, somebody better. Maybe I should hold out for them. So the person that went on the dating app with the good intention is now just sidetracked with all that there is to offer. And then there's the guys and girls that are on there just looking for casual hookups.
It's interesting because in the comments, there are people actually making connections. They're saying, hey, Vanessa is telling Jeff she's available to date. So maybe we can help create a love connection here somehow with this show. I love that. Tammy has a follow-up question. She says, how do you learn to trust a guy that you don't know? She has trust issues and she doesn't trust easily.
Oh, wow. How do you learn to trust? I'm a very trusting person, so that comes quite naturally to me. You see, you have to be careful here because I'm not a relationship coach. I'm a dating and attraction coach. I can get you on the dates and I can, get all that like fun part done with. But the relationship part, I'm not so good at. I'm a divorced single mother. So it would be the blind leading the blind here. Um, I would say, trust issues. How can I trust somebody and trust a guy? And I have trust. I don't. I think those people are just gonna always like have trust issues. I think those people are just like Tammy are just people who are always going to be suspicious of somebody, and it's gonna have to take the right guy to come along and prove that he's different from the others. I'm not a relationship coach, guys. I'm sorry. I just tell you how to get on the date.
You know what? I completely respect that you have boundaries and you're honest about the type of advice that you offer. I also have to get on you for saying that you're in your 30s and you're old, because if that's the case, I'm ancient and that's not fair.
I'm 39, so I'm almost 40.
You're a baby, a smart baby who can help people get the date. But let's talk a little bit about that opening line. You've mentioned it a couple of times. I know you said one that seems to be pretty effective, which is the preface of this is going to seem random or this is random, but are there other themes about how to begin that conversation? And like you said, how to transition it into a more meaningful engagement that you can advise?
Well, of course, you have essentially two types of opening lines. You have a direct opener, we call them, which is, again, this is so random in the daytime, or just go up to a woman saying, look, I think you're absolutely stunning. My name is. That's essentially just showing your intent straight off the bat. And then you've got the second type, which is we call indirect. So you go in there with maybe a situational observation. I notice you have an accent. Where you from? Don't you think the DJ tonight is like really shit? Like, or he's amazing? Wherever you want to go with that. Opinion opener. The opener when you're going indirect is so unimportant. It is what you do with the data that she gives you. Okay, so if you ask someone, hey, where's your accent from? Is it like Spanish or Italian? And she says, oh, it's Italian. And then you come back with, because that's the response. You got to work with that now. Are you going to sink or are you going to swim with that? So most guys would just say, all right, I've done the opener. Now I'm going to be like really play it safe and boring now and just say, oh, what part of Italy are you from? And she'll say, I'm from this part of Italy. And you'll be like, oh, cool. I've never been there. What's it like? And she's just going to go in autopilot mode. But if you if you sort of shift her out of that autopilot mode, come back with what I call conversation clickbait or like a really interesting, inspiring response to her response, that's a lot more crucial than the opening line. So let's go back to, she says she's from Italy. Rather than asking her a series of questions like most guys ask, you can replace that with something like, you know what, I love traveling so much. which is important because you want to get over that data. Remember, conversation is an exchange of data. It's not interrogation. So, you know what? I love traveling, but I haven't been to Italy. I've heard good and bad things about it. Tell me like two things about it that make it like an incredible place to live or visit. And when you kind of use that sort of stock and trade question, she's already thinking, okay, that's a little bit more interesting than most people come up with. And she might say, oh, you know, the people and the food. That's what most people sort of respond with. And there you have, and this is going to sound really technical and geeky, but you do have to get quite technical and geeky when it comes to this part of the interaction. Then you've got what we call two new conversation threads. Okay, you've got cuisine and you've got, you know, culture, and then you can springboard onto those. Oh, you like food? Oh, I love Japanese food. Have you tried this place around the corner? So do you see what I mean? It's kind of like it's a structure. You know, you're springboarding back to yourself, go back to yourself, talk about yourself a little bit, exchange data, don't make it all one way, and then bring the conversation then back to her. So what you've done essentially just with that, I wouldn't call it a routine, maybe a sequence you can call it, is you've got her attention now. That's really important because we've got our phones when we're out, we've got our friends. Why is she going to invest time in you? You might be a great guy, don't get me wrong. You might like be the most interesting guy in the world. But if you're presenting a kind of like a filtered version of yourself, like the nice guy, dull, filtered version of yourself, she's not going to get to see that amazing side of you. See, a lot of guys just play it safe. And it goes back to the conversation skills again. They just ask really dry, uninspiring questions. Often with my clients, I've noticed also that when they talk to a girl, maybe 5 minutes, and then the girl does that horrible sort of side shuffle into the horizon. It's because nice meeting you. I'll say to the client, what does she know about you? You were talking for 5 minutes. What does she know about you? You'd be like, nothing. That's not a conversation. You were interrogating her.
That's really fascinating advice, because I think a lot of people will tend to do one or the other. They'll turn the engagement into an interrogation where it's like, you know, you'll be asking the person 10 questions in a row about themselves, and that does start to feel like an interrogation. The flip side of that is the other extreme where all you want to talk about is yourself. So I guess you have to find that happy balance of being somewhere in between where you're divulging relatively interesting information about yourself while also asking the other person about themselves.
Yes, it is such a common mistake asking too many questions. I found from doing this for over a decade that most guys don't talk about themselves a lot. They do sort of go for the more sort of, you know, interrogation process option. But yes, of course, some of our clients just end up talking about themselves. It should be 50-50. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly 50-50. I mean, you could be talking to an introvert, or you might be, you know, the introvert, and it'll be maybe, I don't know, 60-40, whatever. Let's not get too like, you know, obsessed about this. But it's the basic balance. And it's just very common. It's lazy. I always think it's like, you know, when you're learning a new language, and I've done that, where I've learned a new language, and you get to this point where you think, you know what, I'm going to talk with like people, you know, just, you know, who can speak this language fluently. I'm just going to talk with them. And you think you're at this certain stage, and then what happens is they're talking, and you realize you've got to really concentrate on everything they say, every word. You're like, and you're not enjoying it. And in the end, you're just like, oh, can we just speak English, please? Because this is too difficult. It's kind of like that at the beginning when guys are learning how to have conversations with complete strangers. You've got to really concentrate when you're first doing it. Like, you know, should I say this? Should I say that? And a lot of them just give up and go, you know what? No, I can't do it. I'm just going to be really lazy here and ask her a bunch of questions until I get the answer I want. So yeah, you've got to be very alert, very in the moment when she's speaking to you, because she's not going to give you the answers that you want. I mean, it's very rare. She's going to tell you something you didn't expect, or she's going to say something that you can't off the bat relate to. And what happens is when they face this kind of minor challenge, they just sort of become lazy and think, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to just ask a bunch of questions, or I'm just going to be really dry and nice and see what happens. But you've got to actually be very on it, very focused, and very inspired. A lot of guys, what they do is they keep asking questions because they want that particular answer, and they think when they get that answer, it's going to make a big difference. Now, sometimes that can happen, but a lot of the time, but a lot of cases, by the time they strike that kind of connection. I'll explain why I don't want to use the word connection later, but they think, okay, now it's like a home run, but she's already sort of mentally shut down by then. She's sort of put a block up, and she's already finding her excuses to leave. The reason why I don't like the word connection is because people get confused with connection and commonalities. Sharing commonalities, I always say, breeds friendships. Connection breeds attraction. So people try to look for, what do we have in common? Anything, please help me out here. We must have something in common, and then boom, it's gonna be like a home run. We're just gonna get on. Not the case. You don't know what you're gonna get, and you shouldn't rely on having commonalities. It's about making a connection with somebody.
I love that. That makes me think of that couple in the movie Best in Show, where the lady's talking about the old man that she's married to, and she says, "We both like soup." That's definitely a commonality, not so much of a connection and a point of chemistry. Kezia Noble, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. Any last thoughts before we part?
Okay, thank you for having me, first of all. Guys, just use dating apps as an extra option. Do not rely on them as the solution. Look up from your phones. There are interesting, dynamic, beautiful people everywhere. And you know what? Someone might not be your type physically, but that makes it even more interesting when you find that actually you are attracted to them. So, yeah. Look up from those phones, connect, talk. Let's do it the old-fashioned, organic way.
I love that advice because you see it all the time. You see it everywhere. People are just on their phones. They'll be at a bus stop waiting, and two people who would be perfectly matched with one another are ignoring each other in public because they're on their phones and on their dating apps instead. Thanks so much for your wisdom and your insight. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you for joining us for this fun episode of That Expert Show. My highlight was when she said she was old, at the ripe old age of 35. So take that to heart. Appreciate your input into the show and your comments and watching live. That's part of what makes this all work. If you want to check out the previous episodes of That Expert Show, you can always go to thatexpertshow.com. All of our episodes are listed on there, as well as our tip sheets, which we create based on each episode. We also have a YouTube channel, and we kick this back out to you as a podcast. So we're on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, all those good places. Connect with us on social media. I am on Facebook at Anna Canzano. I'm on Twitter at Anna_Canzano, and Instagram as Anna Canzano. Let me know if you have ideas on show topics you want me to tackle, people you'd like to hear from, people you want me to go seek out for and interview. I love this show. I love what we do. We tap the world's best experts on all these different type of lifestyle topics. It is called That Expert Show, where you help run the show.